Hey guys, what is going on? It is Brooke, or the Undead DM, and I'm back at it again with another video. And in this episode of Homebrew Review, we are going to be going over the subclasses for the Captain class in Valda Spire Secrets. Like the previous video, I'm going to go over the power of the class, what I think of it, and in general, what I would do to fix it based on the knowledge that you and I have of the base class. So let's get started. So, one thing I'd like to clear up right now is that every single subclass gets an additional maneuver from the War Tactics ability in the previous episode. Every single one. They just depend on their power. So, first one here is the Dragon Barrier, the Dragon Banner. So, at 3rd level, when you choose it, you gain an additional battle die. So instead of having 4 battle die, like it states right here in this chart, you get 5. Okay. And then you also get Cleave, the maneuver called Cleave, where whenever you reduce a creature to 0 hit points, or score a critical hit with a melee weapon on your turn, you can expend a die to move up to 15 feet and make an additional attack, and you add the dice to the attack's damage roll. Okay. So the additional battle die is nice. But if this is supposedly using maneuvers to annihilate their foes on the battlefield subclass, you'd think that giving them some kind of additional weapon attack or something like this would be a little bit more advantageous for this. But maybe that's coming in a different one. As for Cleave, it's strange that it specifies whenever you score a critical hit with a melee weapon or reduce a creature to 0. You can just move up to 15 feet, make an additional melee. So this is infinite, because this has the potential to cause infinite damage. Because, well, at least up to 5 additional attacks. Because that's how many dice you have. So, if you reduce a creature to 0, since there's no action cost, you can just spend a die, move 15 feet, hit another creature, and if you kill it, you get to move an additional 15 feet, because it doesn't state that it doesn't expend your movement, but it also doesn't say it does. So this can either be really good or just decent. Then you get at 7th level Wade into Battle, which is a maneuver where you can expend a die to take the dash and disengage actions as a bonus action. That's it. Mind you that the monk has a bonus action disengage and a bonus action dash, but a lot of homebrews, mine included, give them the option to dash and disengage as a bonus action for free at 3rd level. Not for free, they have to expend a resource, but they don't have to wait till 7th level to get it. They just get it. And then you get Fury Attack at 13th level, where when you take the attack action, you can expend a die as a bonus action, and you can make up to 3 melee weapon attacks instead of 1, but each one must be against a different target. I mean, it costs a die, it requires your bonus action, and it requires you to take the attack action. So you're already spending 3 points of your action, 2 points of your action economy, and a resource to make 3 attacks, and you're not, and even upon that, you're restricted. Why? Why can't it just be like the whirlwind attack from the Hunter Ranger? That would have made it a lot more interesting. a lot more usable. It's just a terrible thing because it requires you to take the attack action. It requires you to use a bonus action and a die. That's 3 resources to make 3 attacks when a wizard only has to expend 1 resource to hit 3 targets, nothing else. Strange. And then Vicious Focus at 17th level. Whenever you reduce a creature to 0 hit points or score a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, there's that word again, melee weapon, you enter a Zen state for 1 minute. For the duration, you score a critical hit at 19 or 20, and each time during the duration that you reduce another hostile creature to 0, or score another critical hit, your critical hit range increases from 19 to 20 to 18 to 20, and so on and so forth. And if you fall unconscious, the effect ends early. So critical hits, in case you don't know, really only add on average 1 point of damage, less than that. Literally a fraction of 1 damage. So scoring a critical hit doesn't matter all that much. Scoring a critical hit doesn't add that much damage overall on average. Because all you do, if you watched my New Year's How to Calculate DPR, you just take your DPR, you multiply it by your crit chance, and that's how much additional crit damage you get on average. And since you, as a captain, only get a single melee weapon attack, since you don't have extra attack, and the only way you can boost the damage is if you use Staggering Smite, which you would have at this point, you're on average dealing an additional d12, which is 6.5 damage. So assuming, since you're using a melee weapon, like the ability says, with a 65% chance to hit, and you have to reduce the creature to 0, it's honestly a terrible capstone. I would recommend anything else. Literally just give this to them at 3rd level, nobody will care. In fact, just remove it. It's terrible. So, next up is the Eagle Banner. And at 3rd level, you don't get a ribbon feature, or a very nice feature like the Dragon Banner does. You just get the maneuver. So whenever you make a ranged attack roll against a creature, you can use a bonus action and a die and add it to the roll. And you could use it before the attack roll, but before the DM decides if the attack hits or misses. This is just worse advantage, because you roll the die, and you either get better than advantage or worse than advantage. This honestly would have just been better if it gave you a flat bonus. But then again, if you took archery, it shouldn't really be that much of a problem. But the fact that it's just to the attack roll and not the damage roll. Because the sentence after you add it to the roll stipulates by its language that you have to use it before the attack hits or misses. Which says to me, I could be wrong on this, but it says to me that you have to use it on the attack roll and not the damage roll. It could be the damage roll, I don't know, but that's just my interpretation. At 7th level, you get Vantage Point. You gain a climbing speed equal to your movement speed, and by climbing at half speed, you can climb up vertical surfaces without making an ability check. General mobility, gaining a climbing speed at this level. I guess it's kind of similar to what the Ranger gets at 6th level, where they get an additional 5 feet of movement and a climbing speed or a swimming speed. It's fine, I guess. Close quarter shooting. Now this is what they should have put at 3rd level to be equal with the bonus battle die from Dragon Banner. Because all this is the close quarters shooting fighting style from Unearthed Arcana. Where at 13th level, Being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls or the ranged attack rolls of friendly creatures within 15 feet of you. This could have been a 3rd level feature and nobody would have batted an eye. Scattershot at 17th level. Action. Use your action and make a separate ranged attack for each creature within a 15-foot cone. And if you target only one creature, you add an additional weapon damage die to the damage roll on hit. So, this is just worse rapid fire, which in case you don't know, rapid fire is an actual mechanic in the Dungeon Master's Guide for things like firearms, where you expend 10 pieces of ammunition and you target a 10-foot cubed area, like a 10-foot cube area, and each creature in that you have to make a separate attack roll against them, or they have to make a dex save, one of the two, and then they each get dealt damage based on the weapon's damage roll. This is just a worse version of that, because it's a 15-foot cone. Cones are kind of ambiguous as to where they start. You still have to make a separate attack roll for each of them, but you get the very small consolation prize of, if you only hit one person, you get to roll one additional damage die against them. Never mind the fact that it's taking up your entire action, and you have to be really close to them with a ranged weapon, which, again, with close quarter shooting shouldn't be a problem, but if you're trying to play from range, being within 15 feet isn't really conducive to that playstyle. It's sending a mixed signal like you want to be a shotgunner at the 17th level, but then every other ability, like Eagle Shot and Vantage Point, state that you want to be further away. And close quarter shooting is just in case people get too close to you. But then they just went, well, you know that whole long range playstyle that range characters are known for? Yeah, let's just throw that out the window and give them a close ranged ability. It makes no sense. I'd say move close quarter shooting to 3rd level, give them a new 13th level ability, and change the 17th level ability to be focused more on the long range tactics. Next up is the Jolly Roger banner. I think this is like the dueling playstyle, where you just use a rapier or a cutlass and you're basically a pirate, based on the name. You get parrying stance, where when you use the attack action with a finesse weapon, you can expend a die, and as a bonus action, you can make an additional attack with that weapon. The attack adds the battle die instead of your ability score to the damage roll. So potentially more damage on average by maybe a point or two, but not that much. If this was just, if you make an attack action with a finesse weapon, you can expend a die, and as a bonus action, you can make an attack with that weapon, and you add this die to the weapon's damage. This would have been a lot better, but I know what you're thinking. Brooke, didn't you say that Fury Attack from Dragon was bad? Yes, I did. But that's for a separate reason. Fury Attack requires you to take the attack action, as does this one. It requires you to expend a die, and it requires your bonus action. They're all the same. The difference here is that finesse weapons typically are a lot easier to get a hold of or a lot cheaper, and since you can use your dexterity for them instead of your strength, you can easily make a dex build out of this, which, since you have proficiency in light armor, depending on which cohort you choose, it could be more beneficial that way. And also, making one additional attack may seem like being worse than making 3 attacks, but you gotta remember, you're not making 3 attacks. You're making 1 attack against 3 creatures, because you have to hit a different creature each time. But with parrying stance, you just hit 1 creature. Tricky footwork at 7th level. When you hit a creature with your size or smaller with a melee weapon attack, you can swap places with them. This is basically just the shift mechanic from 4th edition. So all you do is you stab a goblin, and then you can swap places with them. That's it. It's fine. It doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, so you can really get into the middle of shit, which is fine. Unfair play, where both you and your cohort can use an object action, hide action, or shove as a bonus action. And you have advantage on athletics checks to push another creature out of a boat. So, okay. The first portion is fine. You can hide, use an object, or shove as a bonus action. And then they added you have advantage on athletics checks made to push another creature. This would have been an okay ability. Maybe I would have moved it down to 7th level. That would have been fine. But then they had to specify out of a boat. Now I know, it makes sense. It's called the Jolly Roger banner. Jolly Roger is typically associated with pirates, and pirates typically go on ships. This is correct. Thematically it works. But you don't have to, because when you put it in text, it becomes a rule. So now, instead of just getting an advantage on athletics checks made to push a creature, which would benefit every scenario, you now are limited in this ability to pushing creatures off of a boat. Not while on a boat, not anywhere near a boat, specifically off of the boat. So if you're on the deck of a ship and you're fighting mer people, and you don't specifically push him off the edge, you don't get advantage. You specifically have to push him off of the boat. And if you don't get advantage. You can't just push him away from you while on the deck of the ship. You have to specifically push him overboard. And if you don't do that, you don't get the bonus. They could have just removed those last 3 words, and it would have been fine. It would have been a relatively weak ability to get at 7th level, but it would have been at least applicable in a lot more situations. It's also way too high to be getting that. Way too high of a level to be getting this. It should be way lower. And then all hands on deck. You can use your action on your turn to direct each friendly creature within 60 feet of you to take an action of your choice. They can either attack, cast a spell, dodge, or use a magic item. And a creature can use its reaction to take this action. So, basically, this is... People will say this is taking away player agency, but that final sentence says a creature can use the action to take the action. So it's more of a suggestion. But since it costs the creature its reaction, that means if you command your allies to do something, they can choose to do it or not. But one thing I think would have been good is that if they specified in this last, like you see how much extra room they had in this little text box, it would have been a lot better to specify that you can issue individual creatures to do different actions. Because right now, if you command your party to cast a spell because you specifically want the wizard and the sorcerer to cast spell and prismatic spray, but your fighter and your rogue are caught in it and they aren't Eldritch Knight or Arcane Trickster, they just don't do anything. So if this just had the stipulation that you can issue different action commands to different creatures, this would have been a pretty good ability to give at 13th level. I think a 17th level ability needs to be a little bit stronger than this. Lion Banner. So, from the description, is a leader who challenges their foes to combat. So basically this is what you think of the aggro tank, is what I'm thinking this is going to be. So you get the Lion's Challenge, where as a bonus action, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, You can expend a die and challenge them to a duel. They have disadvantage on attack rolls against anyone other than you until the end of your next turn. This is just the spell Compelled Duel. There's no save on it, which is better, I guess, but it's still a bonus action. You still expend a die, and it doesn't stop the creature from attacking anybody else. So yeah, in my opinion, Lion's Challenge is just Compelled Duel, which isn't a good spell already. And also, the fact that it doesn't give you, this one being the sort of aggro tank, doesn't give you access to heavy armor is a bit of a shame. But maybe that's coming in a different subclass, who knows. Saddle Sure. So at 7th level, you have advantage on saving throws made to not fall off your mount. And if you fall off your mount, you land on your feet. And mounting or dismounting only costs 5 feet rather than half. And you can force an attack targeted at your mount to target you instead. So this is just Born to the Saddle from Cavalier Fighter, but 4 levels later, and worse. At the same level that you're getting this as the captain, the Cavalier Fighter is getting evasion for his mount. Good job. You are now a worse Cavalier Fighter, if that was even possible. Reposition at 13th level. You and up to 3 friendly creatures of your choice can move up to 20 feet when you roll initiative. Not half your speed, not your total speed, nothing. 20 feet. Sure, somebody like a dwarf only has 25 movement speed, is essentially doubling his movement speed for that turn. But if you're playing a monk of any kind, it's not really going to help you much when you get an additional 30 feet of movement speed over the course of your lifetime. If this was just half their speed, okay, fine. Move it down to 7th level, you'll be fine. And then Lion's Gambit at 17th level. When you take damage from a creature that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to make an attack against that creature and add half your level to the damage. And you could do this 3 times per short or long rest. Why is this a capstone? It's half of your level, so rounded down, because that is what we use in 5th edition, is rounded down, it's never rounded up. Half of your level at this point is 8. So whoop-de-doo, you get to add an additional 8 damage to your damage roll, when at this point you shouldn't have things like not crossbow expert, but sharpshooter or great weapon master at plus 10. Does this help in that sense? Yes. But it costs you your reaction. They have to be within 5 feet of you, not within your melee reach, not within reach of you. They have to be within 5 feet. So if they're using a reach weapon, you just can't use this. If you're using a reach weapon, and they're using any other weapon, you can't use this. They have to specifically be within 5 feet of you. And the fact you can only do this 3 times per short or long rest. So the stipulation is you have to take damage from them. So not even if they attack you. You have to specifically take health. You have to take health damage to use this ability. Then you have to check and see if the creature is within 5 feet of you. And if so, you have to expend your reaction to specifically make a melee attack against them. And the only compensation you get for expending your reaction, being in a dangerous situation which is 5 feet within an enemy, you also take damage from them, is you get to add half of your level, which is 8 at this point. 3 times for short or long rest. When you're supposed to be a mid-range. So you're not supposed to be up front, but you have to protect the back line if it comes down to it. Yikes. I think this is second to last. I think. Let me double check. Third to last, so pretty close to being done. So the Ram banner, you get Bull Rush. So at third level, when you move at least 10 feet in a straight line and immediately make a weapon attack against a creature, you can use a bonus action to expend a die to shove the target after the attack. You add the die to the athletics check you made to shove it, and on a success, you push them 10 feet away instead of 5. So again, a lot of stipulations here. You have to move at minimum 10 feet in a straight line. So what constitutes a straight line? Everyone knows what a straight line looks like, but in terms of game mechanics, what does a straight line look like? Because if I can draw a straight line between me and the enemy, but my path has to go diagonal, left, left, up, up, diagonal, left, is that technically still a straight line? If so, why? It's not a straight line on the grid, but if I can draw a straight line using my pen, does that still count? So, a little bit ambiguous. And then you have to make a melee attack immediately afterwards. So, you're most likely taking your move action, then taking the attack action, and then you have to expend your bonus action just to shove the target. Sure, you get a nice 10-foot shove, but is that really going to help you in some situations? Certainly. But is it going to help you in a lot of situations? Probably not, especially with the stipulation of 10 feet in a straight line first. And that's all you get. You don't get anything else. You don't get a bonus to move speed, the ability to dash as a bonus action, nothing to facilitate that. Sure-footed. At 7th level, you ignore non-magical difficult terrain. Lame. This could have been 3rd level, nobody would care. Lock horns. Whenever you shove a creature into an ally, that creature can use its reaction to make an attack against the creature. So basically, if you use your Bull Rush and shove the enemy you hit within range of an ally, they can use their reaction to attack the creature you just pushed. This would be very interesting with like a sort of pinball tactic, but there's not a lot of ways to facilitate that. This would be definitely more of a 3rd level, like a 7th level ability. And stay down. So at 17th level, whenever a creature stands up from being prone while within your reach, you can make an attack of opportunity against it. This is just adding a rule that was already existing in other editions, where if a creature casts a spell, if they moved anywhere within your reach, if they stood up from prone, if they missed you with an attack, you got to make an attack of opportunity against it. This is just adding a rule. If this was at 13th level, I don't think anyone would care. This would be like, okay. The Raven banner. So you get Flanking Strike at 3rd level. Whenever you hit a creature with an attack, while one of your allies is within 5 feet of the target, you can expend a die and add the die and half of your level rounded down to the damage, and it must be with a finesse or light weapon. So this can really help you because your cohort's most likely going to be within 5 feet of them. So it's pretty nice. It's a nice little chunk of damage, but it's definitely still in a similar position to being weak as the rogue's sneak attack, which is kind of what this is going for. You also get effortless dodge, where as a bonus action, you can expend a die to take the dodge action, and you can't use this while wearing medium or heavy armor, which is strange because nothing so far gives you proficiency in heavy armor. So I don't know why they had to stipulate that. I guess multi-classing rules, but still. Fine, bonus action dodge is always good. Covert. When you are hidden and a creature discovers you with a perception check, you may attempt a stealth check to hide again. And on success, you reposition yourself and the creature does not notice you. And you can only do this once per short or long rest. Okay. The problem with this is not the effect itself, but it is the mechanic that it's tied to. Hidden and hiding are very poorly worded and not at all used the way that you think they should. So hiding, in order to hide, you have to make a stealth check against everyone's passive perception. And if your stealth check is below a person's passive perception, they become aware. And then they become what is known as a seeker. And the seeker is allowed to make an active perception check against your current stealth check. And if you're, let's say, you're a rogue and you make a stealth check and it's 18, and somehow there's a really perceptive enemy, and his passive perception is 18, so it matches, so if it meets, it beats. So all of his other allies, all of this guard's other allies are stupid and they don't notice you. But then this guard's like, hey, wait a minute. And then he goes and looks for you. And you can't roll below your passive perception. So he rolls, he gets like a 19 in total, and then he finds you. Boom, you're done. Sounds pretty simple. But most players assume that you could just remake the stealth roll. And also with the hide action, you still have to make a stealth check. And there's also no rules, as far as I understand, that facilitate when you are hiding. So if I am in a room and I go behind a pillar, can I hide? Technically yes, because you're behind a pillar, but logically no, because the creature still knows you're behind that pillar. It's not like you just disappeared. So it's not a problem with the ability, it's the rules itself that are the problem. So next up, strike first, strike last. So as a reaction, when a creature you can see takes the attack action, you can move up to your movement speed without provoking attacks of opportunity and make an attack targeting it, once per long rest. I think this would have been better as a lower level ability, because since it is only once per long rest, and you only get to make a single attack against the creature, as opposed to taking the entire attack action. It's a bit sad, but it's definitely not a bad ability. It's just if it's going to remain a single attack, it needs to be lower than 13th level. Because you gotta remember, the haste spell, which is a 3rd level spell that spellcasters get at 5th level, they get access to that. Like, what is this, 8 levels earlier? And it doesn't cost you as the person receiving the buff to get anything. It's just you get to make an additional weapon attack on your turn. That's it. This is just an opportunity attack, but with whatever your movement speed is, range, with the disengage action attached. So maybe move this down to 7th level. And finally, guerrilla warfare. So you have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken a turn in combat yet. And once per turn, when you attack and hit a creature on the first round of combat, you add 2 battle dice to the attack's damage roll without expending them. So this is a little bit strange. The first portion makes sense. You have advantage on attack rolls against a creature who hasn't taken a turn in combat yet. However, this whole first portion of the second sentence doesn't make any sense. Once per turn, when you attack and hit a creature on the first round of combat. So I think the reason they had to specify this was because that means when you if you just removed this, it'd be when you hit a creature on the first round of combat, you could just do this. So if you somehow got things like action surge and extra attack from different classes, or from a different class, you would be able to deal more than just 2 dice. So they specified it can only be done once per turn. But what's strange to me is that it's on the first round of combat. And since it's only once per turn, that means you'd only be able to trigger this twice. Because your reaction, your opportunity attack, isn't on your turn, it's on somebody else's turn. So it's not the same turn, so you could use this twice. That means for the entire first round of combat, you have to somehow position yourself in a way that you'd have to not only be able to get an opportunity attack, but you'd also have to put yourself into a position where you'd be able to benefit from the first part of this, where you got advantage against a creature who hasn't taken a turn in combat yet. So basically, once the first round of combat is over, you don't have a capstone ability. This would have been better as like a 13th level feature, and then given them a more damaging 17th level feature. Honestly, I wouldn't even bother with this ability, just straight up remove it. Because first round of combat style abilities don't really work. In my opinion. They don't work in my opinion. Because if it's the first round of combat, you're going to be out of position. You're either going to get ambushed, or you're not going to have enough movement speed to get to where you need to be, or you're just going to get action economied, where you're going to get swarmed by like 8 dudes, and they're going to go full X videos on you, and you're just going to have no way to stop it. I would honestly just scrap this ability, move Covert and the 13th level feature down to the previous level, and then give them a whole new 17th level and 13th level feature. Just give them a whole new one. And last but probably least is the Turtle Banner. So you get proficiency in heavy armor, and you get Iron Shell, where as a bonus action, you can expend a die and an ally that you could see within 60 feet of you. And that ally gains a bonus to their AC equal to half of the number rolled on the die with a minimum of 1, against the next attack made within the next minute. So basically, you get heavier armor, but then you get a defensive ability that only works on your allies, not yourself. But since, on average, the highest die you're gonna have at this point is a D8. So you're on average getting around 4 on the damage die, or 4 on the die roll. And since it's half the number rolled, that means they're gonna get at minimum a +2 bonus to AC. On average, which is still really good. I actually do like this one, but it's only against the first attack made within a minute. So, I mean, it's essentially an indefinite shield spell for 10 rounds of combat, but I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's more than enough. Slow and steady at 7th level, your movement speed cannot be slowed, and you cannot be knocked prone or moved against your will. So one thing that's interesting is that in this, they use the term slowed here. But slowed in 5th edition isn't a term. It's not a condition. Slowed is not a condition. Slow is a spell. I think what they meant to say, what the intention was, that your movement speed cannot be reduced. But then that brings up a thing like, well, does difficult terrain technically reduce your movement because you have to expend additional movement to go through it? Probably not, but the point here is that if an ability says that your movement speed is reduced by half, or your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet, what have you, that just doesn't work on you. The wording's a little bit funky, but it makes sense. This could have been a 3rd level feature, but I can see why it wasn't. It'd be pretty front-loaded otherwise. Not against it, but... Shield Wall. You count as half cover for effects passing through your space for allied creatures of your size or smaller within 5 feet of you. So, This is basically the defender subclass. You are meant to stand in front of people. So if you have the heavy armor, the shield, in like the dueling fighting style, then you can become pretty tanky. Or the defensive fighting style. And since you provide half cover, you can give somebody the Iron Shell maneuver and have them stand directly behind you, meaning they now have essentially a shield spell because half cover grants +2 bonus to AC and advantage on dex saves. Fine ability. I definitely would have put that at 7th though. It feels a little late at 13th level, especially for what you're getting. But that's just me. At 17th level, you have a pool of 20 armor points. And as a reaction, when you're hit by a melee weapon attack, you can expend any number of armor points and add them to your AC, and you regain all the points on a long rest. So this can be insanely powerful. This is 4 shield spells. And nowhere in here does it state that you wait until the DM tells you what they rolled to hit. So basically, you can sit there, have a creature hit you, and instead of going, well, I need to cast shield because it beat my AC by 1, you can just say, well, it beat my AC by 1, so I'm going to expend 2 of my 20 armor points, and no. Granted, this doesn't work on critical hits. It'd be pretty cool if you could expend like 5 points to negate a crit and then cause it to miss for a capstone, but I can understand why they didn't do that. Overall, I think these subclasses are very mediocre and they don't improve the class to a degree that is reasonable, that is good. I think the bottom of the barrel would definitely be Jolly Roger, as it gives you very little in terms of usability outside of a ship. If they like the flavor of a pirate, that's fine, but don't limit the subclass to a ship. And then I'd say Eagle Banner because of the confusion. Maybe Eagle and Lion can share that spot. Ram is fine. I'd say Raven and Ram are kind of above them. Dragon Banner would kind of be above them, or somewhere in between them, and then Turtle Banner is definitely the best one here, solely because of that capstone and the proficiency in heavy armor, the iron. The entire concept of the Turtle Banner is definitely one of the better ones. Overall, I think a lot of these subclasses need work. Their maneuvers need work. They need more features that actually not only fit with the theme, but give them a substantial boost in power. I think each one needs more than just one maneuver. Do what the dragon one did and give the subclass multiple maneuvers, but give them all in the beginning and then give them features afterwards. So what they did for dragon, where they gave them the cleave, the wade into battle, and fury attack, make them all into a single 3rd level ability, and then give them a new 7th and 13th level feature that has nothing to do with the maneuvers, and then do the same thing for everything else. Give Eagle Banner like Eagle Shot, Targeted Shot, and Crippling Shot. Make Jolly Roger like Herring Stance, Drunken Sway, stuff like that. I think that would make it a little bit more interesting and doesn't stagger your progress so much, because you go from 3 to 7 and then from 7 to 13. There's a lot of gaps here, and the only thing you're gaining is like ability score improvements and mediocre abilities from the base class. Some of these definitely need more work than others. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and in the next episode I'll be going over all the cohorts, so be on the lookout for that video, and I'll see you on the next one.